The scent of jet fuel hadn't even faded from her hoodie, but already Laila Brooks felt the strange and beautiful weight of Seoul wrap around her shoulders like a divine shawl. 1,000 voices buzzed in languages she didn't know. People moved like water, gracefully rushing through Incheon Airport with perfect posture and purpose. She clutched her Bible and suitcase tighter, not from fear, but awe. Lord, I don't know what you're doing here, but I know you brought me here. She whispered the prayer quietly, tracing the worn edge of her devotional journal as she followed her mission team toward customs. The first day blurred by. Orientation, name tags, cultural workshops, and a shared bowl of bulgogi that left Laila both amazed and mildly overwhelmed. But it wasn't until later, when she knelt to unpack donated hygiene kits beside the church altar, that she noticed him. Quiet, tall, a little too formal for 25. His posture was straight, his face clean-cut, and his expression unreadable as he translated for the local pastor. His Korean flowed like a hymn, measured, soft, sincere. "That's Jin-su Han," whispered the team leader, nudging Laila lightly. "Engineering major, volunteer translator, loves coffee, hates crowds, never smiles." Laila tilted her head. "He seems kind." The leader raised an eyebrow. "You see that from one sentence?" "No," she smiled. "I heard it in his tone." That evening, Jin-su sat at a folding table, organizing donation slips when Laila approached with a clipboard and a confused expression. Sorry. Do you know if these go to the shelter or the school?" He looked up slowly. His eyes were deep brown like leaves soaked in rainwater. "For the shelter," he answered in gentle English. "The school kits are in blue bags." "Oh, got it," she smiled. "Thanks, Mr. Han." Jin-su Han. Laila Brooks, Texas, student of law, lover of spicy food, and very allergic to unclear instructions. The corner of his mouth lifted, just barely, but it was there. "Noted," he said. "I'll try to speak with clearer instructions. Miss Texas." That night, after the evening service, Laila sat alone under the paper lantern strung across the courtyard. Her Bible lay open to Psalm 139, her journal filled with questions she hadn't yet voiced aloud. "Do you often write after worship?" a voice asked behind her. She looked up. Jin-su stood there, holding 2 cups of barley tea. "I do," she replied. "God usually speaks after everyone else gets quiet." He nodded and sat on the nearby bench, offering her a cup. Psalm 139. Her brows lifted. "You read upside down?" He smiled softly. "I read a lot of Psalms when I was in the military, especially that one. It kept me from going numb." She looked at him, really looked. Not at his formality or careful words, but the quiet ache in his gaze. "Even if I make my bed in the depths, you are there," she whispered. "He never let go," he said. A sacred silence fell between them. Not awkward, but full, holy. The kind where words bowed out of reverence. Throughout the week, they found themselves working side by side, organizing meals for the homeless, painting a youth center, and translating children's memory verses. Sometimes they spoke. More often, they didn't have to. "I'm not used to quiet people," Laila admitted one afternoon. "I'm not used to people who talk like they're friends with Jesus," he replied. She laughed. "I talk like that? Like he's right beside you." She paused. "He is." Their final evening in Seoul, the mission team visited Banpo Bridge for reflection and prayer. As the sun set behind the Han River, casting golden light across the water, Laila pulled a pack of colorful Post-its from her coat pocket. "What are those?" Jin-su asked as she handed him one. "Prayer notes. We do this back home. You write something you're surrendering, or hoping for, and leave it behind. Symbolic, but God sees. He stared at the blank note, then took out a pen. They didn't read each other's words, but as the wind brushed through their coats and the sound of evening traffic faded into the city's hum, they pressed their prayers against the railing side by side. Laila's read, "Lord, if this is from you, let it survive the tide." Jin-su's scribbled in slow, careful English, "I will wait on the Lord, even if I do not understand the path." Their fingers brushed briefly as they stepped back. "Do you think they'll stay?" she asked. "I think God holds tighter than tape," he said. "Then I'll leave it here." A gust of wind passed, but the notes stayed. And somewhere deep inside them both, a seed had taken root. Not love, but something eternal, something called trust. The final day of the mission trip unfolded like a slow symphony. Sun-drenched morning devotions, playful banter over packing snacks for the shelter, and countless small lasts that no one dared name aloud. Last time brushing paint on the classroom walls, last group photo on the church steps, last evening service, and somewhere in the middle of it all, Laila felt the quiet ache of almost saying what was in her heart, almost reaching for his hand. After breakfast, the team gathered on the rooftop terrace of the guest house for final reflections. The air smelled like roasted barley and citrus, and the city below bustled like a waking giant. Each person shared what God had revealed to them during the trip. When it was Laila's turn, she stood and tucked a braid behind her ear. "I came here asking God for a map, like, show me the next step, show me the person, show me the purpose. But what I heard this week wasn't a map. It was more like a whisper. Just walk with me." I guess I'm learning that trust isn't knowing the destination. It's knowing who's walking beside you. Silence, then soft murmurs of amen and nods. Jin-su didn't speak, but he didn't look away either. His gaze rested on her like sunrise on quiet water, still but fully present. Later that afternoon, Laila found herself assigned to plant flowers near the community center steps. Jin-su appeared beside her with a gardening trowel and a small pot of marigolds. "Need a partner?" he asked. She smirked. "What? Mr. Han gets dirt on his hands?" He knelt beside her and cracked the faintest smile. "Jesus washed feet. I can plant flowers." They worked in rhythm, plant, press, pat, until the rain began in whispers. A few drops, then more, then a full pour. "You've got to be kidding me," Laila laughed, wiping her wet forehead with the sleeve. "Seoul's got jokes." Jin-su reached into his backpack and pulled out a folded umbrella, dark navy, almost too small for two. "Come," he said, lifting it open. The city blurred into soft gray as they stood beneath the trembling umbrella, shoulder to shoulder. The rain danced on rooftops and puddled at their feet. "Are you cold?" he asked. She shook her head. "No. I feel weirdly peaceful." A long pause. The air between them shifted, heavier, but not suffocating. Sacred. "Can I ask you something?" she said, voice gentler now. He nodded. "What brought you to faith?" His eyes didn't shift, but his hand gripped the umbrella a little tighter. "I was 17. Military service was mandatory, but depression wasn't. I hid it well. My father only saw medals. My mother thought prayer would cure it, but we didn't pray to God, only about him." Laila's face softened. She didn't speak, just listened. "One night, after drills, I stood at the edge of the barracks rooftop, not planning to jump, just curious if anyone would notice if I did." A swallow. "My bunkmate came up behind me. He was reading Psalm 34. He didn't ask me anything, just sat and read aloud. 'The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit.' Over and over, like a drum beat. I cried, not because I believed but because someone stayed. Layla's hand moved instinctively, not to touch him, but to rest near his, palm open. Christ stayed longer, he finished. Eventually, I heard him too. They stood there, wrapped in silence and soft rain, as the umbrella strained against the wind. "Thank you for telling me," she whispered. He nodded, as if bowing to the gravity of the moment. "You make me feel safe in God's timing," she said suddenly, unsure where it came from, but knowing it was true. His eyes turned to her, genuine, warm, serious. "Then I'll wait in it." That evening, during the last worship service, Laila felt the tears fall before the music even began. Not from sadness, but from wonder. It wasn't just the mission trip ending. It was something deeper, something she didn't quite have language for. Afterward, she slipped outside to the church's stone courtyard. She found Jin-su standing there beneath the lanterns, hands in his coat pockets, staring up at the sky like it might speak. "Rain stopped," she said, "but the clouds stayed." "Yeah, I get that." They stood together again. No umbrella this time, just shared stillness. "Do you think this was coincidence?" she asked. "No." He shook his head slowly. "I think some appointments are written into the calendar of heaven." She looked at him, and this time didn't look away. Last day of the mission trip. The airport was too bright, too polished, too sterile, too loud with its cheerful announcements and clattering luggage wheels. Laila stood near the check-in kiosks, gripping her boarding pass like it was a lifeline and a sentence. The rest of the mission team gathered near the departure gate, snapping final photos and sharing inside jokes, their laughter echoing against the tiled floor like a celebration. But Laila couldn't hear them. Not really. Not while he stood just a few feet away, hands in his coat pockets, eyes on her as if the moment might shatter if either of them blinked. She had asked God for clarity. He gave her peace. She had asked for a reason. He gave her a person, and now she had to board a plane and leave him behind. Jin-su said nothing at first. His gaze traveled from her face to the worn leather strap on her duffel bag, then to the Bible tucked under her arm, then back to her eyes. Still no words. Laila broke the silence first. "I hate goodbyes." "Then, let's not call it one." Her laugh was soft, broken at the edges. "Okay, what do we call it then?" He looked at her with eyes that didn't rush. "A comma, not a period." She tilted her head. "That's the nerdiest metaphor you've ever used." "I was trying to be poetic," he murmured, almost shy. It worked. The intercom crackled with an announcement in both Korean and English. Passengers for Dallas were now boarding. A clock ticked in her chest, not just counting minutes, but moments that would never repeat themselves. He handed her a small envelope. "Don't open it until you're on the plane." "Is it a love letter?" "No." A pause. "Maybe." She stared at him. "You're hard to read, you know that." "And you read too deeply." "Only when it's worth it." Another beat of silence passed between them, but it didn't feel empty. It felt held. She adjusted the strap on her shoulder and took one small step back. Just one. Her voice was steadier than her heart. "I don't know what happens next." He nodded. "I don't either." She bit her lip. "But I want to keep praying with you. And I want to keep listening when you talk to God." They were still smiling, soft, sacred smiles, when the tears finally came. Not loud, not dramatic, but real, like mist rising from warm ground after a storm. She reached for his hand, not to hold it, but just to touch it one more time, and he did the same. Fingertips to fingertips. "Even oceans obey his voice," he said quietly. "So can we," she whispered. Then she turned and walked toward the gate. She didn't run, didn't look back, because sometimes faith isn't in clinging, it's in releasing with hope. As the plane lifted into the sky, Laila opened the envelope. Inside was a note, handwritten, careful lettering. Psalm 121, verse 8. The Lord will watch over your coming and going, both now and forevermore. P.S. If the bridge is still standing next year, I'll be waiting. Her tears came quietly, and her smile stayed. Texas. The first morning Laila woke at 4:45 a.m. The world was still dark. Her alarm chirped like an impatient bird, and her eyelids ached from only 3 hours of sleep. But she rose anyway, groaning as she dragged her blanket around her like armor. Outside her apartment window, the streetlights flickered above empty sidewalks. Her coffee maker sputtered to life like a reluctant disciple. She placed her Bible on the kitchen table, lit a candle, and waited. At exactly 5 a.m., her phone lit up. Incoming video call. Jin-su Han. Location: Seoul, South Korea. Time: 7 p.m. She answered, hair wrapped in a scarf, face bare, mug steaming in hand. "Good morning," he said, a smile curling through the screen. Or, "Good night for me." "You look like a tired angel," she teased. "You look like you haven't even opened your eyes yet." She chuckled. "You're not wrong." From that day forward, it became their sacred rhythm. Daily calls. 5 a.m. for her, 7 p.m. for him. Devotionals synced through YouVersion, journaled notes, and whispered prayers that closed each session. They picked a book of the Bible each week. First Philippians, then Ruth, then James. One morning, Laila read James 1:4 aloud. "Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." She paused, eyes stinging. "I feel like this long-distance thing is just stripping me bare." "Maybe," Jin-su said gently, "but not to break you, to rebuild you. It's just hard to feel close when your face is always pixels." "I know," he replied, "but God doesn't need proximity to prove purpose." Then he held up a yellow post-it to the camera. On it, he had written in his neat, deliberate handwriting, "God doesn't waste distance." From that day on, the post-it notes began to multiply. By week 4, Layla's kitchen wall was filled with yellow squares and verses. "Wait on the Lord. His timing is perfect. Lord, protect him when I can't." And on Jin-su's side of the world, his desk mirror bore her scribbles too. Post-its she had mailed in an envelope titled, "For the days we don't talk but still pray." One read, "I miss you, but I miss God more. So I keep seeking him." It was 2 months in when Laila finally cracked. Her exam had gone terribly. Her professor hinted she might lose her fellowship application due to low class rankings. She had missed Jin-su's call because of work, and by the time she got home at midnight, her phone was dead. She sat on the floor, hugging her knees, crying so hard her shoulders shook. "God, are we being faithful or foolish? What if I'm holding on to a season you already closed? Please, please tell me I'm not alone in this." She didn't hear thunder, didn't feel peace, but she did something different that night. She didn't call him. She opened her Bible. Psalm 13 stared back. "How long, Lord? Will you forget me forever?" Across the ocean, Jin-su stared at the empty screen of their call log. Laila hadn't answered. He didn't panic, but his heart was quiet in a way that hurt. "Father," he prayed softly, "I won't ask you to fix her or rush her. Just sit with her, if I can't." Then he picked up a blank post-it and wrote the only thing he could. "Lord, when I cannot reach her, reach deeper." He pressed it to the corner of his window. Rain tapped lightly against the glass. The next morning, Laila woke up late, still groggy, still tender. Her phone buzzed. Voice note from Jin-su. I don't know what yesterday looked like for you, but I kept praying. I don't need answers today, Laila. Just permission to keep walking with you, even when the path hurts. Let's not chase feelings. Let's chase faith, together. She exhaled, slow and broken and grateful, then opened her drawer, pulled out a new post-it, wrote, still here, still seeking, still yours. Pressed it above her sink, right beside, God doesn't waste distance. 9 months later. The calendar no longer shocked her. 9 months. 9 months of 5 a.m. devotionals, handwritten letters tucked between textbooks, and voice notes that made her laugh out loud in the quiet corners of the law library. 9 months of waking up with hope, and sometimes falling asleep with doubt. And yet, every single day, Laila Brooks showed up to trust. Jin-su, on the other hand, had found a rhythm in the chaos. He split his time between online engineering classes, church youth ministry, and prepping documents for his long-awaited visa interview. The day circled in red on his calendar looked like a promise. 6 more weeks, he had whispered during their last call. Then maybe, no more screens between us. Laila smiled. 6 weeks is nothing. We've waited longer for slow Amazon deliveries. But underneath their jokes were aching hopes, fragile and trembling, wrapped in scripture and whispered dreams. Back in Texas, Laila sat in the campus library, surrounded by books and blinking highlighters. Her finals were approaching like a storm front, and she needed to pass, badly. The Seoul-based Christian legal fellowship she applied for had shortlisted her, but only on the condition that she maintain top performance. And truth be told, she wasn't sure she could. Lord, she scribbled in her journal, if you open the door, why does it feel like I'm dragging myself through it? She closed her eyes, thought of his voice. 6 more weeks. Jin-su stood outside the university chapel, his phone gripped tightly in his hand. He had just finished praying with a student who struggled with suicidal thoughts. It had been a heavy, beautiful night. God is still pursuing you, he'd said. He hasn't let go. Then his phone buzzed. Subject, visa renewal status, urgent. From Korea Immigration Office. His hands froze. He clicked the message. Your F1 renewal request has been denied. Scholarship suspension pending. Everything blurred. He blinked again and again, rereading the words as if they might reform into something more hopeful. They didn't. His breath caught in his throat. He sat down on the chapel steps, and for the first time in months, he said nothing. Laila had just poured coffee when her phone rang. Laila. His voice was slow, like grief carefully wrapped in cloth. You sound like someone died. Her smile faded instantly. Jin-su, what happened? A pause. Just long enough to feel like falling. The visa got denied, and my scholarship is suspended until further notice. Wait, what? They said it was a technicality, a missing signature, but it's final. I appealed. They rejected it in less than 48 hours. Silence. A long, raw silence. Then Laila spoke, soft and cracked. Why did God open the door just to shut it again? I don't know, he whispered. Her voice broke. We prayed. We fasted. We waited. You did everything right. I didn't think obedience would lead to this. I didn't think obedience would hurt this much, she said. He nodded on his end, tears threatening. I feel like I built a bridge between us, and God just burned it. Neither of them said we should stop. Neither said, I can't do this anymore. Instead, they sat on the phone together, wordless, letting the ache speak where language failed. Laila reached for a Post-it and stared at the blank square. She didn't write a verse, not tonight. She just wrote one word, why, and stuck it on her fridge beside all the others that once felt so full of promise. That night, Jin-su lay on his back, staring at the ceiling, his heart pulsing with disappointment. Then he sat up, opened his Bible, and turned to John 11. Lord, the one you love is sick. But Jesus stayed where he was. 2 days. Why didn't he run to heal him? Why didn't he come sooner? He closed his Bible and knelt beside his bed. His voice was barely a whisper. I still believe in you, even if I don't understand you tonight. Dallas, Texas, late Sunday morning. Laila hadn't seen Elijah Lewis in 3 years. Not since he left her crying in a Walmart parking lot, explaining how God just hadn't confirmed her as his wife. Not since he ghosted her small group, unfollowed her online, and started dating a girl who quoted Proverbs but never seemed to pray. And yet there he was, standing at the front of her church after service, with a soft smile and a Bible in hand, like no time had passed. Laila, he said, wow, you look good. She crossed her arms. God's been faithful. Yeah, he always is. She didn't reply. Not when he leaned slightly closer and said the words that caught her completely off guard. I saw your missions photos. Korea, right? You're glowing. But you also look tired. She narrowed her eyes. What do you want, Elijah? Just to talk. Maybe catch up. Be there for you. Her chest stiffened. Be there for me? Now? When Jin-su's voice had gone quiet over the past few days, when she felt like she was praying into a canyon, she forced a half smile. Thanks, but God's already here. And she turned and walked out before the memory of Elijah's apology could echo again. Seoul, South Korea. Han, residence. Sunday dinner. Jin-su hadn't wanted to come. He rarely did anymore. The longer he walked with Christ, the harder it became to sit through dinners steeped in status, obligation, and shallow pleasantries. But his mother had insisted, "There's someone I'd like you to meet." He arrived to find the table already set. The air smelled of grilled meat and something perfumed. Then he saw her, Soo-jin, a family friend from years ago. Beautiful, polite, wearing a blouse so immaculate it looked starched by angels. Do you remember Soo-jin? His mother asked. She just returned from studying in France. Soo-jin bowed. It's nice to see you again. He nodded politely. Likewise. Dinner was pleasant. Too pleasant. Soo-jin smiled too easily, laughed too softly. His parents beamed like they had already printed wedding invitations. She's just here to visit, his mother said sweetly. But who knows what God might be arranging? God doesn't use surprise matchmaking, Jin-su muttered under his breath. What was that? His father asked. Nothing. After dinner, Soo-jin asked to walk in the garden. You don't have to pretend, Jin-su said gently. I know why you're here. She nodded. I told them I wasn't looking either, but you're kind, and that's rare. He looked away. Kindness without calling is a dangerous thing, he replied. That night, back in his small apartment, Jin-su sat at his desk, the overhead light casting soft shadows over his half-eaten rice. He pulled out a fresh page from his journal and began to write, not in Korean, but in the soft, trembling English he reserved only for her. Dear Laila, today I sat through a dinner where everyone smiled like they were doing God a favor, like pairing me with a woman who quotes scripture but doesn't know how to grieve with God will somehow cancel out the ache of your absence. I didn't say yes. I didn't say anything. But I also didn't fight it like I should have. Is that disobedience or exhaustion? I miss your laugh, your sarcasm. the way you interrupt your own prayers when your coffee spills. But lately, I miss your silence more. Not because I want it, but because it hurts. And when it hurts, I know I still love you. I wonder if this distance is still his will, or just proof we misunderstood him. But then I remember your post-it. Still here, still seeking, still yours. And I breathe again. I won't send this letter, but I needed to write it to remember I haven't stopped choosing you. Not even once. Jin-su. He folded the paper carefully, tucked it into a drawer, then knelt beside his bed. God, give me the strength to obey you louder than the world around me. And please, don't let her think my silence means I'm gone. Dallas, Texas. Day 11 of silence. Laila stared at the last seen timestamp beneath Jin-su's name. 10:03 p.m., 11 days ago. Not unread, not blocked, just no reply. The post-its on her fridge had begun to fade slightly. One had fallen off and now lay curled on the floor like a discarded memory. Her devotional journal was half filled, then suddenly blank for days. Too much scripture, too few answers. She had tried to stay graceful. She had tried to wait with dignity. But now it just felt like abandonment disguised as mystery. She clicked open their chat. There it was, her last message. Thinking of you tonight. Hope your meeting went well. I'm praying Isaiah 41 verse 10 over you. No response. She had rewritten a follow-up 6 times over the past 3 days, deleted it every time. But now, she couldn't hold it in anymore. Voice message, 0:47 seconds. Her voice trembled from the start, gentle but cracked. I gave you my trust. Did you give me your silence? Pause. I've shown up, Jin-su, every day, every morning at 5 a.m. when I didn't feel anything. I fasted for your visa. I begged God to make it work, and when he didn't, I still said his name with my voice trembling. Pause. But now I feel like I'm the only one here. Are you still choosing me? Or just the memory of what we were? She sent it before she could change her mind, then turned her phone face down and cried into her open Bible. Seoul, South Korea. Han University. Rooftop. Night. Jin-su had played her message 5 times. 5. And he still couldn't find air in his lungs. Her words weren't cruel. They were worse than that. They were true. Did you give me your silence? He had, not out of malice, but out of fear and shame, and the slow erosion that comes when disappointment burrows into faith like rot under fresh paint. He had prayed every night, written in his journal, even recorded a voice note once, but deleted it before sending. Because how do you explain loving someone while breaking under the pressure of proving you're still worth loving? Tonight, though? Tonight he knew he couldn't stay quiet anymore. He walked down from the rooftop and into the quiet stairwell, pressed record, and finally let the tears fall. Voice message, 1 minute, 19 seconds. Laila, deep breath. I didn't choose Korea. I didn't choose the plan. I didn't choose this silence. His voice breaks slightly, but I still choose you. I know I haven't shown up the way you have. I've been afraid, not of loving you, but of not being enough for the woman who has prayed circles around my unbelief. I see your trust. I feel it. I don't take it lightly. I just didn't know how to carry it when I felt like everything else was falling. Pause. But please hear me when I say, I'm still yours. Not just emotionally, not just romantically, spiritually. I haven't stopped praying for you. I haven't stopped thanking God for you. I don't know what the path looks like anymore, but I'll keep walking it, if you're still willing to walk with me. I'm sorry for the silence. I'm sorry it felt like absence. his voice barely above a whisper now. Please don't let go yet. He didn't wait for her response. He just went to his knees and prayed that God would speak louder than his failure. Tell, Dallas, the next morning. Laila woke to the familiar ping of a message. She opened it with trembling fingers, listened once, then twice, then collapsed onto her knees beside the couch, face in her hands, weeping. Not because it fixed everything, not because the pain vanished, but because for the first time in days, the silence had broken, and through it, she heard not just Jin-su's voice, she heard God's mercy. Dallas, Texas, day 1 of the fast. Laila turned off her phone. Not just the notifications, the whole thing. No messages, no music, no Jin-su. Just silence and scripture. And 7 long days she had committed to God. She poured water into her favorite mug and opened her journal. The first page of this week's fast read, not praying for an answer, just praying to align. That was the difference this time. She wasn't asking God to confirm Jin-su. She was asking him to clear the fog inside her. Day 2. Her mom came into the kitchen as she was steeping herbal tea. The table was covered in devotionals, a Bible, an untouched bowl of oatmeal, and Post-its scattered like petals. Another spiritual lockdown? Her mom asked gently. Laila smiled weakly. Fasting. 7 days. Her mom pulled up a chair and sat beside her. You always go quiet when you're about to make a hard choice. I need to know if this thing with Jin-su is still from God, or if it expired. Her mom tilted her head, studying her daughter the way only a mother can. Baby, she said softly, don't make a god out of the weight. What? God doesn't compete with what you idolize, even if that idol looks like hope. Laila felt the words hit like a subtle rebuke wrapped in love. Her mother continued, waiting is holy, but when the wait becomes louder than the one you're waiting on, that's when peace leaves. Day 4, Psalm 46. Laila read the verse over and over again. Be still and know that I am God. Not, be still and know the outcome. Not, be still and figure it out. Just, be still and know. She pressed her forehead against the edge of her Bible and exhaled. Lord, if you want me to keep walking with him, I will. If you want me to let go, I'll do that too. But I need you to be louder than everything else right now. Seoul, South Korea, Hansung Baptist Church. Late evening. Jin-su sat across from Pastor Eom, their church's teaching elder, an older man with warm eyes and a patient spirit. He had told him everything, the silence, the missed visa, the letter he never sent, the girl in Texas who made his heart beat in rhythms deeper than romance. And now, Jin-su said, I don't know if I should fight for this or let her go. Pastor Eom sipped his tea. You know, Peter almost drowned not because he stopped loving Jesus, but because he looked at the waves more than the one calling him. You think I've taken my eyes off Jesus? I think you've let your worth determine your obedience. Jin-su looked away. I've failed her. I failed the plan. I feel like I'm the weak link. God isn't asking if you feel worthy, Pastor Eom said gently. He's asking if you'll be faithful. That silenced him. Then the pastor leaned in and asked something no one had asked him yet. Do you love her enough to lead her in surrender if God asked you both to walk away? The question sat in his chest like a rock. He didn't answer. Not yet. Day 6? Laila knelt on her rug, journal open to a blank page. God, she prayed aloud, I won't manipulate you with hunger. I won't demand clarity like it's a paycheck. Just teach me how to hold his heart if it still belongs in my hands. And teach me how to let it go if it belongs back in yours, she cried then. But they weren't frantic tears. They were releasing tears. And in that moment, she felt something she hadn't in weeks. Peace, not certainty, not a blueprint, but a soft, steady whisper inside her spirit. I've never stopped being in this story. Day 7, at 5 a.m., Texas time and 7 p.m. Seoul time, they both opened their phones. A short message from Laila. Subject, still here. Not because it's easy, but because it's still yours. Yours, if you still want to walk forward. If not, I'll still bless you as I let you go. A short message from Jin-su. Subject, still choosing. Not because I deserve you, but because I believe God can redeem silence. I'm not whole, I'm not finished, but I'm willing to keep walking if your hand is still extended. They read each other's messages under the same sky, apart but realigned. And for the first time in weeks, the still small voice felt louder than everything else. Dallas, Texas. Prison Legal Aid Clinic, Thursday morning. The first time Laila walked into the prison legal clinic, she wasn't ready for how loud the silence felt. The waiting room was plain. Pale walls, cheap chairs, a table with 3 mismatched Bibles, and 2 ripped Time magazines. A guard nodded for her to come through. You the law student? Yes, Laila Brooks. He didn't ask for more, just opened the door. Her first client was a young mother named Trina, who hadn't seen her daughter in 4 years. Wrongfully convicted. No resources, just a folder filled with handwritten letters and a desperate hope someone would care enough to read them. And Laila did. That afternoon, she sat in the back of her car outside the courthouse. Her hands were trembling from the weight of the story she had just heard. Her Bible lay open on the passenger seat to Matthew 25. I was in prison, and you came to visit me. Her phone buzzed. It wasn't from Jin-su. It was an email from her professor. Her grades had improved. Her fellowship status was still eligible. She should have been ecstatic, but instead, she wept. Not for herself, but for the hundreds of women like Trina whose names no one ever remembered. And as tears rolled down her face, she whispered, God, if this is the altar you want me to build on, I will. That night, she wrote slowly, every letter careful, every word surrendered. I will love him best by loving you first. Then underlined it. Once, firmly, Seoul, South Korea, Yoonbit Youth Ministry, Friday night. The basement of the church buzzed with laughter, loud worship music, and teenage boys arguing over basketball stats in Korean and broken English. Jin-su stood by the snack table, trying not to let his nerves show. You're not that old, one of the boys teased. You just act like it. Discipline is not a symptom of age, Jin-su replied coolly, offering him a juice box. Exactly what an old person would say. He almost laughed. Almost. But when one of the kids, a 15-year-old named Kwan, asked if they could talk privately, something shifted. Kwan opened up about feeling invisible, about his father walking out, about wanting to disappear. Jin-su sat beside him on the church steps and listened. Didn't preach, didn't correct, just stayed. Then finally said, I used to think I had to be seen to be saved, but God found me even in silence. Did he really? Yes, and he didn't leave. That night, as the building emptied and the cold air rolled over the city, Jin-su stayed behind to wipe tables. And he realized he wasn't lonely. He was planted. That night, by the light of his desk lamp, he wrote, I'll love her best by loving God first. He closed the journal, pressed his hand to its cover, and breathed deeply. Not because he didn't miss her, but because this This quiet obedience was what love demanded now. That same night, they didn't call that day, they didn't FaceTime or send voice notes, but they each sent a simple text at nearly the same hour. From Laila, "I saw God today in broken places, and I thought of you." From Jin-su, "I'm praying for your strength more than our story. That's how I know I still love you." Neither needed more than that, because sometimes love isn't loud. Sometimes it's threaded quietly through obedience, and it holds, even across oceans. Dallas, Texas, Tuesday afternoon, campus library. The email subject line looked ordinary. Fellowship selection update. International opportunities. Laila didn't even click it right away. Her inbox was full of job alerts, legal news, and prayer requests from her women's group. But something about this one pulled her thumb to it. When the screen loaded, she stopped breathing. "We are pleased to offer you a fully funded, year-long placement in our Christian Legal Fellowship program, based in Seoul, South Korea." Seoul. Seoul. Her heart stuttered. She blinked, reread it again, and again. Then she sat back in her chair, eyes wide, blood rushing to her ears. Her first thought wasn't, "Praise God." It was, "Is this a trap?" Because what if this wasn't God, but her own heart trying to resurrect what God had buried? What if her longing for Jin-su was bleeding into her purpose? What if she said yes and lost herself? She closed the laptop and rested her forehead on the cold table. "Lord, don't let me mistake open doors for divine ones." That evening, Laila didn't call anyone, not her friends, not Jin-su, not even her mentor. She needed to hear one voice, his. So she brewed chamomile tea, lit her prayer candle, opened her Bible to Proverbs 3, and sat cross-legged on her floor. The verse was familiar, but tonight it pulsed. "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding." She whispered it aloud. "In all your ways acknowledge Him." Then she reached for a Post-it. Her hand trembled, and she wrote, "If it's bait, close the door. If it's a bridge, lead me across it." She pressed it onto her wall, right between "be still" and "no," and "God doesn't waste distance." Then, with tears quietly streaking down her face, she closed her eyes and waited. Seoul, South Korea. Yoonbit Youth Room. Same time. Jin-su was locking up after Bible study when he saw the notification light on his phone. An email from a friend at Hansong Legal Center. "Hey, I heard the American girl you talked about months ago just got matched to the Seoul Fellowship. Laila, right? Thought you should know. Small world." He froze. Fellowship? In Seoul? He stood alone in the hallway of that little church, heart pounding like a drum. He didn't call her, didn't message. Not yet, because deep down, he knew. If this was really God, she would call when she was ready. Back in Texas, 2:43 a.m. Laila woke from a restless sleep, the glow of her prayer candle flickering faintly against the dark. She reached for her journal, wrote one sentence in the dark. "I'm not afraid to go. I'm afraid to go for the wrong reason." The next morning, she called the number in the email, not to accept, not yet, but to ask questions, pray more, listen deeply. She wasn't running toward Jin-su. She was walking toward purpose. And if their roads crossed again, then it would be because God had written it that way, not because she forced it. Incheon Airport, Seoul. The air felt different, sharper, softer, sacred. Laila stepped off the plane with nothing but a rolling suitcase, her Bible in her tote, and a heart both steadied and trembling. 9 months ago, she had stood in this same airport full of tears. Now, she was still unsure, still vulnerable, but she had peace, Not because she had answers, but because she wasn't chasing signs anymore. Just presence. The driver held up a sign with her name and smiled warmly. The fellowship had arranged housing near a church-run community center in Hanam-dong. Quiet, clean, simple. The windows let in golden light, and the walls smelled faintly of cedar. She dropped her bag, sat on the edge of the neatly made bed, and closed her eyes. No text to Jin-su, no, "I'm here," because this wasn't about him. It was about finishing what God had started. "Let me walk in the Spirit," she whispered, not in assumption. Banpo Bridge, just before sunset. That evening, she walked, not through shopping districts, not into city lights, but toward the bridge, the one where she left a yellow post-it prayer clinging to a railing. "Lord, if this is from you, let it survive the tide." She didn't know what she expected. Maybe it had blown away. Maybe the rain had washed it clean. But when she reached the same steel section, heart pounding, eyes stinging, there it was, her note, water warped, edges curling, but still there, pressed beneath another post-it. Fresher, firmer, written in blocky English script she recognized like breath. Still waiting, still believing. Jin-su. Her chest tightened. She traced the corners of the note with shaking fingers, eyes blinking fast to clear her vision. He had come back. At some point, he had stood in this exact place, over the same stretch of river, and declared not a feeling, but faith. She sat down on the cold stone bench nearby. Didn't cry, didn't run. She just rested. "Lord," she breathed, "you preserved this. Not for nostalgia, but for alignment." She opened her journal on her lap and wrote, "When God keeps what the storm should have taken, pay attention." That night, Laila lit her prayer candle in her new apartment and stared at the empty message thread. Jin-su, across the city, walked home from youth ministry, feeling strangely restless, unaware that she now shared the same moon. Both paused. Both nearly reached for their phones, but didn't. Because there's something holy about letting God finish the sentence before you speak. Before bed, Laila wrote one more post-it and pressed it between Psalm 121 and Isaiah 55, not chasing love, just walking in obedience. If love meets me there, so be it. And for the first time in months, she slept like someone who knew they were found. Seoul, Cafe Rua. Tuesday afternoon. Laila arrived early. Of course she did. The cafe was small, hidden between a bookstore and a florist, with steamed windows and violin music whispering through the air. There was a single table in the back by the frosted window, and the server seemed to know exactly where to seat her. She ordered barley tea, hands folded, heart bracing. She didn't check her phone, didn't rehearse a speech. She just let the silence breathe. The bell above the cafe door jingled softly. She didn't look up right away. She didn't have to. She felt him before she saw him. And when she finally lifted her gaze, there he was, wearing the same gray wool coat he wore the day she left, only now his posture seemed heavier, but steadier. He stood at the edge of the table for a breath, unsure if he should sit. "Is this seat taken?" he asked gently. "It always was," she replied. He smiled then, barely, but enough to break something open in her chest. They didn't hug. They didn't reach across the table. They just sat, like two people who had walked through fire separately and now shared the smoke. "You cut your hair," he said. "You grew yours out," she replied. He chuckled under his breath. "I didn't mean to. I just forgot to cut it. You were always bad at self-care. And you were always good at calling me out." They laughed softly, and for a moment it felt like time had stopped being a wall. It was just a hallway again, leading back to each other. She reached for her tea. That's when she saw it, dangling from his keychain. Not flashy, not golden, just a simple silver band looped through his car key. Her hand froze mid-motion. Is that? He followed her gaze, nodded once. They tried to choose for me, he said, voice low. Make it easier, cleaner, cultural, practical. A pause. But I said, my heart is taken. Her eyes filled immediately. She looked down, pressing her palm flat against the table, as if trying to steady the ache building in her chest. Jin-su! Her voice broke slightly. You didn't even know if I was coming. He swallowed hard. I didn't need to know. I just needed to stay ready. She looked up at him, eyes glassy, lips trembling. I wasn't sure if you'd want me anymore. I never stopped, he whispered. I just stopped trying to deserve you. They didn't rush into confession. They didn't fall into each other's arms. They just sat at that tiny table while the tea cooled and the world outside moved on. So what now? She asked quietly. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled something from his coat pocket, a folded Post-it note, worn from being carried too long. I found yours, he said, under mine. You kept it? I read it every week. If this is from you, let it survive the tide. And it did, she whispered, and so did we. The server came by to refill their tea. They sat in a silence too full to interrupt. And somewhere between the second cup and the first real smile, Laila whispered, This doesn't fix everything. No, Jin-su said, but it starts something again. Not a second chance, a deeper one. Seoul, 3 weeks later, Laila didn't expect to fall in love with Seoul again. Not like this. Not in the quiet moments, holding her clipboard at a refugee literacy center, kneeling to help a Congolese teen sound out the word justice, or when a Syrian girl asked if she believed in Jesus because her smile looked like his stories. She wasn't just surviving here anymore. She was sewing. Every weekday afternoon, she mentored refugee students, teaching basic rights, helping with paperwork, and leading storytelling workshops that ended in prayer circles and hugs. She journaled differently now. The reward of obedience is not the outcome, it's the clarity. And each night, when her work was done and the city softened into warm lights and quiet streets, she met Jin-su, sometimes for dinner, sometimes just a walk, sometimes for shared silence on the same old bench near Bampo Bridge, where God still felt closer than the sky. Yunbit Church, robotics room. Meanwhile, Jin-su came alive in the church basement. He'd started a weekend robotics class for middle school boys, kids who struggled in school, who found dignity in circuits and wires, who grinned when their makeshift cars actually moved. You were made to build things, one boy told him. You too, Jin-su smiled, and not just machines. He hadn't spoken much of Laila during the first class, but by week 3, her name came up naturally, in stories, in lessons. Miss Laila teaches too, he told them, not with wires, with words. One boy whispered to another, Is she his girlfriend? Jin-su pretended not to hear, but he smiled. They didn't post photos, didn't chase a label, but they were dating, slowly, sacredly. They prayed together more than they kissed, held hands less than they held each other's burdens. It wasn't perfect, but it was anchored. Han family estate, Sunday dinner. It had been 3 weeks since Jin-su visited his parents. He expected the polite welcome, the overfilled plates, the careful small talk. He didn't expect Soo-jin to be there again. She's just stopping by, his mother said sweetly, pouring tea. She stopped by last month too. His father cleared his throat. We just think it's time you consider a woman who understands our ways. The air chilled, meaning our customs, our culture, our future. his mother said gently. She's American, his father added, almost apologetically. And different. Jin-su pushed his chair back slightly. His tone remained calm. She understands our faith. That's what matters. His father frowned. Faith doesn't change culture. Jin-su met his gaze squarely. No, but faith redeems it. The silence that followed was deafening. He didn't storm out, didn't raise his voice. He simply folded his napkin, bowed, and stood. I honor you both, but I don't need approval to walk in obedience. Then he left. That night, rooftop cafe. Laila stirred her tea as Jin-su recounted the conversation. He didn't dramatize it. He just let the weight of it sit between them. Are you okay? She asked. He nodded slowly. It hurts, he admitted, but it doesn't confuse me. Do you resent that I make it harder? No, he said, eyes steady. I resent that people keep trying to make love easier than it should be. Say that again. I chose you, he whispered, not because it was easy, because it was right. Her eyes misted. She reached across the table and took his hand. Let's keep growing, she said softly, even when it's not glamorous, especially then. Seoul, Han Financial Building. Friday morning, the headlines hit like a slap. Han Financial under investigation for ethics breaches. Top Korean banking dynasty implicated in illegal land acquisition. The photos came next. Boardrooms, masked executives, and a blurred shot of Jin-su's father leaving a building under a sea of reporters. Jin-su's phone lit up before he even finished reading the article. Mother, don't speak to anyone. Say nothing. Lay low. Pastor Eom, call me. Now. Unknown number. Tell your foreign girlfriend to keep quiet too. The last one made his blood boil. But it wasn't shock that hit him. It was shame, even though he had nothing to do with it. The name still belonged to him. Han Jin-su, son of the storm. Layla's apartment, 1 hour later. He showed up unannounced. Eyes red, jaw tight. His coat soaked from the light rain that had started falling just after noon. She opened the door, took one look at him, and stepped aside without a word. He collapsed onto the edge of her couch, shoulders heavy like they were holding up a world that had cracked open. It's bad, he said quietly. She nodded. I saw it. The media's not lying this time. My father's company. It's been corrupted for years, and I've known parts of it. I just didn't know how deep it went. And now? He looked up at her, eyes wild, voice sharp with something too close to panic. Now I'm being told to pick a side, deny, defend, or disappear. He stood suddenly, pacing her small living room. We could go. Just start over. Forget this place. Start fresh. Her heart cracked, not because he didn't love Korea, but because he was tired. So tired. She stood, slowly, walked over to him and placed a hand gently on his chest. Jin-su. He looked down at her, 100 thoughts flickering in his eyes. You can't just leave your country. Why not? Because you're not Jonah. This isn't Nineveh, and God isn't sending a whale to drag you back. She took a breath, voice trembling but firm. You're not meant to escape the fire. You're meant to stand in it, to be the man your father never was. Laila, no. Listen. Her voice softened, but didn't lose its strength. God doesn't waste pain. He doesn't expose things just to burn them. He exposes them to purify. And maybe, just maybe, he's asking you to stay, to lead differently, to show that legacy can be rewritten. He dropped his forehead into his hands, a raw sound escaping him. Not quite a sob, not quite a growl, just grief. I don't know how. Good, She knelt in front of him, resting her hands on his knees. That means you'll have to rely on God to do it. A long silence. Then, his voice, barely audible. Do you think people like me get to change things? She smiled through tears. I think God loves using people like you to do exactly that. That night, Laila wrote, don't run when you're meant to redeem. Don't retreat when you were called to rebuild. Jin-su wrote, my name isn't clean, but it's not cursed either. It's available for whatever God wants to rewrite through it. Later that night, they stood together on Laila's rooftop. The city below still buzzed with rumors and scandal, but above them, the stars didn't flinch. Jin-su held her hand, voice quiet. If I stay, it might cost me everything. Then let it cost you, she said, eyes full of faith. If it's obedience, it's never wasted. So he decided to fast. Wednesday morning. Day 1 of the fast. Jin-su had planned everything down to the second. 3 days of fasting and prayer. No distractions, no hints, just him and God, asking the same question over and over. Is it time? By the third morning, the peace came. Not loud, not glowing, just settled. He rose from his knees, made tea, and pulled the small ring box from his drawer. It wasn't flashy, just silver, smooth, engraved with a single word in Korean, faithful. He called the cafe near Banpo Bridge and asked for a quiet corner reservation under Han. He asked her to meet him there at 4:30, just before the sun set, but he didn't say why. He didn't need to. By 2:10 p.m., dark clouds had begun curling over Seoul like fists. By 3 o'clock, the first drops fell. At 3:42, the subway line he was on froze. Emergency alert, flooding in the tunnels. Service temporarily suspended. He looked down at his phone. No signal. His breath caught in his throat. No, no, no. He pounded the call button again. Again, nothing. Then he stood and ran. Up the station stairs, into the downpour. Banpo Bridge, 4:20 p.m. Laila stood beneath her umbrella. Except by now, it barely mattered. Her shoes were soaked. Her curls had surrendered to the rain. She checked the time again. 4:28. Still no message, no call, no sign of him. The wind picked up. Her throat ached with disappointment she hadn't dared give voice to. She looked out over the water, eyes burning. God, she whispered, I didn't come here for fairy tales. I came because I believed you were still writing this. But if this isn't your plan anymore, if it ended while I was still hoping, then I'll let go. Her lips trembled. Even if I love him, I won't make an idol out of something you only meant for a season. And just as she turned to walk away, she heard it, feet pounding against wet pavement. Breathless, desperate. Laila! She turned, and there he was, drenched, soaked to the bone, chest heaving, eyes locked on her. She covered her mouth in shock. What? The train, he panted. It stopped. I ran the last 5 blocks. She stared at him, speechless. He stepped closer, water dripping from his coat, from his lashes. I nearly lost the woman God gave me to a train delay. Her heart cracked wide open. He reached into his coat pocket, trembling, and pulled out the ring box. Opened it slowly. Didn't kneel, didn't make a speech. Just looked her dead in the eyes and said, This isn't about romance. This is obedience. You're the promise God wrote into my life when I wasn't even looking. And I'll keep choosing you, rain or not. Tears blurred her vision. She nodded, sobbing now, and whispered, Yes. Not shouted, not sung, just yes. a whispered offering of surrender and joy. He slid the ring onto her hand, then pulled her into him as the rain poured, washing over two people who had waited well, and found that God always comes, even in delay. 1 week later, the sky was quiet, the kind of quiet that comes after a storm has had its say. The air still held a chill, but the rain had paused, as if heaven itself had bowed in reverence. Laila stood near the same railing where it all began. The city shimmered around her, golden light reflecting in the river. The hum of traffic in the distance felt muted, like background music waiting for the real moment to begin. And then, footsteps. Slow, steady, Jin-su. Not rushing this time. Not out of breath, not caught between duty and delay. He came like a man who knew. Knew he was where God wanted him. Knew who stood in front of him. Knew what was about to happen. He stopped a few feet from her. Neither spoke right away. She smiled. "No train delays today?" "Not even a red light," he said softly. They both laughed gently, not loudly. The kind of laugh only healed people know how to share. Jin-su reached into his coat and pulled out a small stack of old Post-its. Some faded, some folded. All carried between journal pages, pockets, and prayers. He set them gently on the bridge railing. "I've kept every one of these," he said. "I didn't need reminders, just proof that waiting wasn't a waste." She looked at him with tears in her eyes. "You kept them?" "Everyone." Then he slowly pulled something else from his coat. Not a new ring. That had already been given. This time, it was a vow. He knelt, not out of tradition, but out of honor, on wet concrete, rain beginning again in soft, reverent drops. No audience, no music, just heaven watching. He looked up at her, soaked, steady. "You were never the distance, Laila. You were always the bridge." Her hand covered her mouth. Tears fell freely. She nodded, whispered, "Yes, even through oceans." He rose, and they both reached for the same marker she once used on that very first yellow square. Together, hand in hand, they wrote, "Love that waits, love that worships, love that wins." Then they pressed it gently beside the others, rain soaking their shoulders. Post-its swirling in the wind around them like fragile little prayers taking flight. 1 year later, a new set of Post-its now hangs in a classroom. A law student writes, "Justice begins with presence." A teenage boy from Jin-su's robotics class now leads worship with his own guitar. Their apartment is filled with morning prayers, open Bibles, and burnt rice from laughing too long. But on their anniversary, they walk back to the bridge, and just for a moment, they see one yellow Post-it still holding on. Tattered, faded, but readable. "Lord, if this is from you, let it survive the tide." She smiles. He wraps his arm around her. They don't say anything, because they don't need to. We didn't just fall in love, we stayed in it. And staying is how love becomes holy. A love story rooted in faith, sealed by obedience. The apartment was small, not tiny, but cozy in that way that invited people to breathe. One wall was painted soft sage green. Their Bible sat open on the coffee table, flanked by 2 mismatched mugs of half-finished tea. Morning light spilled through gauze curtains, casting golden streaks across the worn rug, and above the kitchen counter, a corkboard, not fancy, just full, lined with rows of Post-it notes, some curling at the edges, some fresh and bright, some written in his sharp, blocky English, others in her rounded rush script. One said, "Pray before you assume." Another, "Ask God what's next, not what's fair." And near the center, "Love that waits, love that worships, love that wins." Morning devotion, 7:02 a.m. Laila sat cross-legged on the couch, thumbing through the book of Micah. Jin-su sat beside her, hair still messy, eyes sleepy but alert. "Want to read aloud?" she asked. "Only if you promise not to interrupt with commentary." "No promises," she smirked. They read together, alternating verses, paused in silence after the words, "He has shown you what is good," then prayed, out loud, together, heads bowed like it was the most natural thing two married people could do. Because now, it was. Banpo Bridge. That evening. On their 1-year anniversary, they returned. Same time of day, same breeze, same worn stone ledge. Laila wore a beige coat and her same leather boots. Jin-su held her hand in his. They didn't speak much as they walked, just breathed, just remembered. And when they reached the bridge's midpoint, they saw them. A young couple, laughing, sharing fries from a paper bag, pausing to take a selfie. The girl noticed the tattered note still stuck beneath the metal rail. She leaned in to read one. "Someone must have loved each other enough to wait," she said, tugging her boyfriend's sleeve. Jin-su looked at Laila, eyes full of depth and quiet fire. Then softly, "Just for her. No. We loved God enough to trust." She didn't reply. She just smiled. And in that one smile, he saw every prayer they had ever whispered come to life. True love doesn't just wait. It prays. It surrenders. It endures. The end.